Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the second installment of Workforce Wednesday's informational webinar series, sponsored by the Louisiana Department of Corrections in partnership with the Louisiana Workforce Commission and Right on Crime. I am Scott Payton, the State Director for Right on Crime, and will be moderating today's webinar. Just a few housekeeping items. Please feel free to enter any questions you may have in the chat or the Q&A box, and we will answer your questions after the presentation. You will also find links to past and upcoming webinars in the chat box. But before we get started with our presentation, Work Opportunity Tax Credit, we will view a pre-recorded video message from Secretary James M. LeBlanc with the Department of Corrections.
I'm Secretary Jimmy LeBlanc. Thank you for participating in the upcoming events leading up to April's Second Chance Month. We have many planned events that are coming up. Also, thank you all for the work being done specifically around bridging gaps and barriers to post-release employment that has already been in the works. The work around second chances and destigmatizing post-release employment will not happen overnight. We are doing all we can to erase this stigma, including partnering with our community members and with the Louisiana Workforce Commission. The workforce coming out of the DOC is highly trained and ready to work. We offer more than 130 stackable industry-based credentials such as construction, welding, culinary arts, automotive, ServSafe, horticulture, and many, many more. We also offer soft skills training and life skills training, which is so important to you guys. Ultimately, rehabilitation is a decision that has to be made every single day by individuals re-entering back to their friends, families, and communities. However, the support we provide as community partners makes that decision so much easier. And thank you guys for everything that you're doing in our communities and our workforce portals and all the things that are going on in our communities. We really appreciate it, and everyone is working hard to make our state a better place to live.
Great news from the Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your continued commitment to ensuring a pathway to successful reentry for the thousands of individuals who will be returning to society each year. This webinar series is an excellent example of the coming together of numerous community partners and government agencies to address coordinated reentry efforts and to ensure success for those genuinely seeking a second chance. I am very excited to introduce today's session, which aims to provide a better understanding of a tax benefit available to employers through the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program. I am joined today by Ms. Nicole Learson with the Louisiana Workforce Commission. Nicole comes from the private sector, where she spent over 15 years in higher education, working up from financial administrator to chief academic officer. She has experience in program and fiscal management, public relations, and marketing. Nicole has been recognized as a distinguished alumni by the National Association of Equal Opportunity. She is one of the 2009 recipients of the Network's Journal's 40 Under 40 Award. She was the 2008 recipient of the Biloxi Regional Medical Center Caring Women Award. Nicole was a March of Dimes Spotlight honoree and one of South Mississippi's 2006 Top 10 Business Leaders Under 40. She is an alumnus of Leadership Gulf Coast, a current board member for both Girl Scouts Louisiana East and the East Baton Rouge Parish Library Control Board. She was also an appointed member of the Louisiana State Legislature's College and Career Readiness Commission. Nicole is now employed with the Louisiana Workforce Commission, where she began as a fiscal officer for the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. At present, she is the state program manager for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us, and please share with us the many benefits of this tax benefit.
Thank you all so much. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm excited to share with you information regarding the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program administered through Louisiana Workforce Commission. So I'm going to go right on ahead and share my screen and then jump right into it. All right, give me just one moment. All right, are you all able to see the presentation? All right, so let's move forward. So this morning, like I said, I'm going to share some information about the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program. We call it WOTC, or WOTC for short, because it's a mouthful. And I'm going to share what the benefits are to Louisiana employers, what are the target groups that new hires are eligible for so that the employer would qualify for the tax credit, how to apply, which is very simple, and then walk through what forms are required to apply for this tax credit, and provide you with some resources so that you can get more information. And so essentially, the WOTC program is a federal government initiative, and it's for Louisiana Workforce Commission. It's considered an employer services program, and it's a great way for Louisiana employers to reduce their cost of doing business. And the mission of WOTC is really to incentivize employers through this federal tax credit to hire individuals who face significant barriers to employment, and also to increase, thereby increasing their job opportunities. And ultimately, the goal here is to help job seekers gain on-the-job experience and gradually move from economic dependency to self-sufficiency. Okay, and the program is really geared towards new hires only, which, you know, that's something hopefully we can look into in the future. But right now, as far as the program is considered, it only applies to those folks who are hired for the very first time with the employer. So what are the benefits? As you can see on the screen, the tax credit, typically the maximum amount is around $2,400, and it's based on qualified wages of that new hire within their first year of employment, and it's capped right around $6,000. Now, it does vary based on the target group, and as you can see, for the target group that involves veterans, that maximum amount is increased to as much as $9,600, depending upon what that veteran, that new hire who is a veteran, what they qualify for or are eligible for within this target group. But the main thing that employers should know is that there is no limit to the number of new hires who may qualify for these target groups. So as many new hires as you bring on board, you can apply for tax credit for them, and if they are eligible for any of the target groups, then that employer will receive or be certified for tax credit for those individuals. So let's take a look at the target groups for which these new hires are seeking eligibility, okay? And so the first is considered target group A, which we call TANF. This is considered the short-term TANF recipient, okay? And basically, TANF stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So if this new hire is part of a family who's receiving TANF and has done so for 9 consecutive months within the 18-month period prior to being hired on, then they qualify for this particular target group. With the veterans group, the veteran has to be a qualified veteran. And what does that mean? It means that just because they're a veteran doesn't necessarily qualify them or make them eligible for the target group. They have to meet certain criteria as well. And so as you can see, some of the criteria, all of the criteria here on the screen, if they are a veteran and they're part of a household that receives food stamps or SNAP benefits, then they are eligible for this target group. If they are a disabled veteran and have been unemployed for 6 months or more, they qualify under the target group of qualified veteran. And one that's not listed on the screen here that is also applicable to veterans is if they were referred by LRS for vocational rehabilitation services, then, and they are a veteran, then they are eligible for the target group B, which is qualified veteran, okay? So the most important thing to remember here is not just a veteran, but a veteran that meets one of the criteria within that group, okay? Now, the next target group is entitled ex-felon, and this obviously is for those individuals who were justice-involved individuals or formerly incarcerated persons. And so if they were incarcerated for a felony or served time for a felony, they qualify for this group. In addition to that, there are individuals who are currently incarcerated and who are participating in a transitional work program. Those individuals also would be eligible under this group. And so a lot of times employers will say, well, I had this incredible worker that came on board through the transitional work program, and now that he's released, we want to hire him directly, and now I want to apply for the WOTC, the tax credit. Well, unfortunately, that's not possible because, again, if you apply, well, let me just say this. If you apply for the tax credit while they were participating in the program and now you've hired them, they're considered a rehire, okay? So the most important thing is apply for that tax credit once you bring them on board as part of the transitional work program, or don't and apply for them when they come on board, but they will show up in the system as already having been hired by you. So that's where it becomes very, very important that you understand the difference between a new hire and a rehire and how that affects this particular target group. Most important thing, again, the takeaway is apply for that tax credit while you have them as a transitional worker. And the wonderful thing about this group is, as an additional incentive, I typically like to bundle this WOTC with the Fidelity bonding program, which gives employers an additional incentive for what you would consider at-risk individuals, which not only include persons who are justice involved, but also individuals who may have been dishonorably discharged, or various other individuals who you would consider at risk. So it gives the employer additional assurances. Target group D is the designated community resident. And that individual is someone between the ages of 18 and 40 who resides in either an empowerment zone, an enterprise community, or a renewal county. Now, obviously that last target, particular criteria was named by someone outside of Louisiana because we have parishes here, right? But that is the one that is applicable to Louisiana, because we do not have empowerment zones or enterprise communities here, but we do have what's called rural renewal counties or communities. And so we're going to jump ahead so that you can see that these include 9 parishes out of the 64 parishes here in Louisiana, which are Bienville, Claiborne, Franklin, Jackson, Morehouse, St. Mary, Tansas, Vernon, and Webster. Okay, and again, because we only have those 9, the individual will qualify if the employer hired an individual who currently lives in one of those parishes and falls between the ages of 18 and 40. Target group E is vocational rehabilitation referrals. And again, those are individuals who are receiving rehabilitation services. And typically, we require supporting documentation, or we can verify that through LRS. But if they are receiving those services, at the time that they're hired, they would then qualify for this particular target group. Target group G is the SNAP recipient. So if your new hire, if the employer's new hire is part of a member of the family who's receiving food stamps, they qualify for this target group. Again, that would be between the ages of 18 and 40. And then also target group H is SSI recipients. So those individuals who are receiving SSI benefits within 60 days of the time that they are hired. Our last 2 groups here include the long-term family assistant recipient. Now, this is different. It varies from the very first target group I talked to you about, in that this is an individual who's part of a family who has received TANF for an extended amount of time, and that is up to 18 consecutive months before being hired, whereas it was 9 months or less with the target group A. And then the last group, the qualified long-term unemployment recipient, is an individual who's been unemployed for 27 consecutive weeks prior to being hired. So how does an employer, what is needed for an employer to apply to receive this tax credit? There are 2 simple forms, maybe 2 pages, or front and back 1 page. The first is the IRS Form 8850. Now, the interesting thing to note about the WOTC program is this program is administered through the Department of Treasury, specifically the IRS, and the Department of Labor. Okay, so this first form is an IRS form that is required. Okay, and it's basic information. What is the new hire's name, their information, when was their hire date, which is the most important thing probably on that form, and of course the employer's information. And we'll talk about why that hire date is so important in just a bit, but that information is essentially what is required on the 8850. And the second form, which is the Department of Labor form, is the ETA Form 9061. Now, that a lot of the information is the same in terms of the new hires information, their social, their start date, and of course the employer's information. But then it goes into questions specific to the target groups. So this is where you want to make sure that if your new hire is a veteran, that is checked on this form, because that is how we identify their specific target group for which they're seeking eligibility. Okay, so it's 2 forms, the 8850 and the 9061, both required to be submitted in order to apply for that tax credit. Now, why is the start date so important? because it's an IRS mandated deadline that the WOTC application be submitted within 28 days of hire. Okay, so we at LWC don't have to receive it within 28 days, but it has to be, if you're mailing it in, it has to be postmarked by that 28th day. Okay, so you can either mail it in or you could submit it online through our WOTC online system. If you upload it directly to our online system, it has to be uploaded and date stamped by that 28th day. So the day that you upload it will be its date stamp, and that will determine whether or not you submitted it in a timely manner. Again, this is an IRS mandated deadline, so there's no way around it. It has to either be uploaded into our system by the 28th day or postmarked by the post office within 28 days. So here at LWC, what the WOTC unit does is we receive these applications and we go through and verify eligibility for each of the new hires. Once we have determined their eligibility and see that they are in fact eligible for that particular target group, we then send out our determination letters to the employer. If you upload to the system directly, you probably included as an employer your email address, which means that you would receive a notice immediately once that application has been certified or denied. And of course, if not, and you mailed the application in, we mail out those determination letters so that you would receive it via mail. Now, if for whatever reason the individual does not qualify for the target group, or they are eligible, but we need supporting documentation, that information would be included within that notice and or letter, so that we can get that information and hopefully qualify that individual and thereby certify the employer for the tax credit. Now, the one thing that I do want to say about this before I move on is at LWC, we certify employers by, again, verifying information within the application. We do not file the credit for employers. That is done at a later time when employers are filing their taxes. But it is important to note that the certificate, if you are certified for the tax credit, the letter that you receive from us, which is a certification letter for the employer, has to be submitted with your tax documentation in order for you to receive the credit. All right, and I think I talked about that. Now, some employers, like the larger employers who have do a lot of hiring, will use a consultant to do their HR work or to gather their HR documentation. And so we find that happens quite often again with the larger employers. The interesting or important thing to know about that is if an employer is using a consultant, that the IRS Form 2848, which is the power of attorney and declaration of representative, must be completed, signed, notarized, and submitted to LWC prior to any WOTC applications being submitted by the consultant on behalf of the employer. Once we receive that 2848 form, we again verify the information and we approve it. And once we have an approved POA or power of attorney in our system, at that point the consultant can begin to submit WOTC applications on behalf of that employer and again, it could be a CPA firm. Typically, there are consultants out there that specifically deal with WOTC, or a third-party HR firm that an employer may use for their HR purposes. But in any event, if a consultant is submitting applications on behalf of an employer, they have to have an approved POA or a power of attorney submitted to us and approved by us before we can receive and verify any applications on behalf of that employer. So Where would you go to register for an employer account if you want to automatically upload the WOTC applications to our system? You would go to laworks.net/WOTC. And right there on the landing page, you'll see in that box there, the login box, the apply here button. You would simply click, or apply now button. You would simply click on that and go through the simple process of applying for this account. Once an employer does apply for this account, at that point, they can begin to upload as any and all of their WOTC applications to be processed. So finally here, you have some resources. If you go to the IRS website and type in WOTC, it'll bring you right to that page with more information regarding WOTC, as well as the IRS 8850 form. If you go to the Department of Labor and type in WOTC, it'll bring you to that WOTC landing page, which also has the information about the WOTC program, as well as the 9061 form. Or you can simply go to our website, which has both of those forms in the most up-to-date version, as well as detailed information about WOTC and information that you might need about supporting documentation that might need to be included with your application, and all of the information that you would need to know about WOTC. And so that would be laworks.net/WOTC. So with that, that is all of the information that I have to share with you today about WOTC. Again, this program is so important because in this pandemic now, there are so many people a year ago who didn't qualify for any of these eligible target, or weren't eligible for any of these target groups, who are now eligible at this time. So we want as many employers as possible to know about this program as they're hiring and bringing folks on board, as we're turning the corner with this pandemic, to apply for this tax credit and hopefully incentivize hiring in the process and making sure that folks are being put to work. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I welcome all questions.
Thank you, Nicole. That was a great presentation. This is awesome information for businesses and definitely an opportunity for employers to realize a substantial tax savings for their business. Looks like we have a few questions. I know we're, because of technical difficulties and a very detailed presentation, we are running not necessarily out of time, but we will take as many questions as we can. The first question for you, Nicole, is why do other states' WOTC's program differ from Louisiana's?
Well, actually, because this is a federal initiative, each state administers. Each state has a state agency that administers administers this program rather, and it's pretty much the same in every state. Every state has these particular target groups. The eligibility for each of these target groups is the same, and you submit your application through that particular agency. For, again, Louisiana, it's LWC. But no matter where you live, if you're in a state, in this state or any other, that employer within that state who has a new hire may qualify for WOTC.
Thank you, Nicole. The next question, is there a time frame for a veteran to qualify concerning when they separate it from military service?
There is not a time frame. As long as we receive with your WOTC application a DD-214 that shows your time in the military, and then of course, making sure that you meet one of the criteria that I discussed, that veteran could possibly be eligible to allow that particular employer to receive the tax credit.
Another question, Nicole, is are employers taking advantage of this program? Do you have any statistics on the number of employers, or just maybe in general, if the program is being utilized or underutilized by employers?
Well, I think it's safe to say that it's probably being underutilized. We have generated millions of dollars each year in tax credits, and we continue to do so. But at the end of the day, we haven't yet reached all employers across the state, and we need to. There are some areas where I talk to employers all the time who are new to the program, who have just found out about it and didn't know anything about it. So our hope is that as many this information and awareness about this, as many people as possible are made aware about the WOTC program, so that we can make sure that employers are receiving this tax credit.
Thank you, Nicole. Looks like there's, well, one more question in the queue here. Two more questions. What is the requirement for businesses? Can a new business apply for tax credits, or do they have to be in business for a certain time period?
That's a great question. No, there is no time frame. There isn't a time frame or time period. If you're a brand new business, you probably really need this tax credit. So make sure that if you have a new hire that you think will qualify for one of these, one of the target groups, that you go ahead on and apply.
The next question, do you know of any local or major employers that have consistently taken advantage of the WOTC program?
Yes, as a matter of fact, consistently Target, Walmart, some of the fast food restaurants all around the state, the franchises consistently participate in this program. What's really important to me, though, is that the smaller employers, the mom and pop operations, have the opportunity to take advantage of this as well. And so again, that's why it's so important that we get this word out, so that they can apply and take advantage of it.
That's great. And you actually answered the next question in the queue was, does the credit apply to private businesses, and can mom and pop businesses apply?
Absolutely.
In a previous webinar, someone asked about nonprofits. Do nonprofit organizations qualify for the WOTC credit?
That's a great question. I'm glad someone asked that. In fact, and this is a little known secret, nonprofits can actually take advantage of WOTC with a caveat. They unfortunately can only receive this tax credit for target group B, which is the veteran target group. So it is not applicable for any of the other target groups. But if you are a nonprofit and you hire a veteran who may meet any of the criteria that's required under the veteran target group, you can in fact receive a tax credit as a nonprofit.
Thank you, Nicole. And that looks like all the time and all the questions that we have. Again, thank you very much, Nicole. That was an informative presentation. Today's session is the second of our four-part webinar series to educate employers on the benefits of hiring quality candidates with criminal records. Join us next week, Wednesday, March 24th at 10:30 a.m. as our guest, Ms. Dana Campbell with Louisiana Workforce Commission, will discuss the federal bonding program. Please see the chat box for registration information. Today's session and future sessions will be recorded and made available for viewing and sharing. This series will end in April, which is Second Chances Month, with additional events to include a virtual Second Chances job fair. Please stay tuned for additional information. Thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next installment of Workforce Wednesdays. Have a great rest of the week.